Okay, so let's be clear, the following video is not a review. We are not claiming to say whether the film is good or bad because we haven't seen the film. This was recorded the 18th of December 2019, the eve of the opening of the movie Rise of Skywalker. As you can see here, the critic score is quite low in comparison to what you'd expect from a Star Wars movie. But this being what it is, Scott Mendelsohn over at Forbes is not alone in reviews like this. Now, this was a social media reaction. It was a pre-review embargo reaction. But since then, Jeremy Jans and John Campea, who are usually shills for this kind of franchise, they have been very, they haven't minced words, basically, let's put it that way. So that's the point of this video. We're talking about how disheartening this is and why we're really not intending on seeing this movie anymore. Hello, welcome to Brand X Reviews. So today we're going to do two videos actually. First one we're going to talk about Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. This isn't a review, this is just talking about some of the reactions that have come out for it. Part two, we're going to talk about a franchise that hopefully will be taking something great from our childhoods and doing something good with it, but that'll be for part two. So, point of this video anyway, obviously Rise of Skywalker's at the point that we're recording this hasn't come out yet in cinemas, but a lot of reviewers have given their opinions on it, their professional opinions on it, and it pretty much says it all. So, what do you think anyway?
Well, I don't think anybody had that great expectations going into this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's been a lot of hate over the last 2 years for The Last Jedi. I think we were kind of middle, to be fair, really.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because at least they didn't turn Luke Skywalker into a villain, but at the same time, it's like, I've not felt the urge to go back and see it again.
Yeah.
And I'm not in any way, shape or form, like, enthused to go and see the new film. I have a friend who knows me pretty well. And he was like, alright, I take it you're going to be busy on, like, such and such whenever, like, 19th of December or what. And I'm like, no, why would I be busy? And he's like, Star Wars. And I'm like, shit, it's out on the 19th. I honestly had lost track. It's like, no, I'm not bothering to watch it. It's like when a fan like me is like, yeah, I haven't even bothered checking the release date, that's not a good sign.
Well, that's the thing, because, like, obviously we've got a friend, Buff, and I've been to see every Star Wars film with him at the cinema since the special editions in '97. We did go to see Solo, because it was a tradition to go on day one as well. That was a big thing as well. But since The Last Jedi, we did go see Solo that came afterwards, but we didn't go on the opening day. And then obviously for this one, it was like, are we even going to bother with this one? And we've just said no, you know.
Just wait until we hear reviews, but reviews ain't looking too great.
Yeah, and you can always say, well, how can you know until you've seen the film? You can't form an opinion until you've seen it. Yes, you can. I mean, sometimes it can be way off the mark, but it's pretty consistent, especially when you've got known Disney, Lucasfilm shills like John Campea and Jeremy Jans. As much as I like those guys, they are shills massively. Those guys aren't even like shilling for this, and they really gave The Last Jedi quite a big break as well, and even they don't like this, so that really says something. If I can just read this as a quick one, Scott Mendelsohn at Forbes, this was a fairly articulate, this is a pre-review embargo reaction, so it's not a review, it's a reaction, but it pretty much says it all. So he says, this is Scott Mendelsohn at Forbes, he said, at worst, I expected The Rise of Skywalker to be a well-made movie that I didn't like or whose story choices I disagreed with. I was not expecting a genuinely bad movie with video game plotting, thin characters, weak action, and endless exposition of no consequence. Heartbreaking. And I can definitely understand that. I mean, it's not even reading between the lines. That's a very specific thing to come out with there. And I don't think that's like film snobbery, because a lot of time with reviews you get like perfectly good films and they get slated by these reviewers because it's got really choppy editing and the pacing is off. It's like, I'm not a film student, you can still enjoy a film that's got all that kind of stuff in. But I think with this, that pretty much speaks to what we were concerned with being the problem.
I mean, to be honest, I still wanted to see what actual like audiences think of it before I like form a final like definitive opinion. But I've already noticed they're starting basically bracing for impact, like selling down like the effect of this film and like, oh, you know, some audiences aren't going to like it, and oh, there's those toxic fans again. It's like, well, it's funny because fans have like really enjoyed The Mandalorian and massively supporting it. They've really liked the new Star Wars game that came out that actually like feels like a Star Wars game. It's just the films they're not supporting because they're not the films you'd expect. And when you diehard fans of the previous films are like, I can't even be arsed with this film, you've got a real problem on your hands.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people as well that kind of come into this, and like younger people that I think they've got like a sort of romanticism for the originals, but they grew up with the prequels, so they kind of think, well, as long as it's got lots of flashing lightsabers and sound effects, that is all Star Wars is. And they've really forgotten about the hero's journey, all that kind of stuff that you didn't really get in the prequels. I mean, Phantom Menace, there isn't really a protagonist in that film. Red Letter Media made a good point of that. Whereas, at least with the original trilogy, you had that, and there was something very human about this story that's obviously supposed to be, so far away from Earth, both space and time. You can still relate to it. Whereas these new films, they just seem to have, again, just ditched all that. And a lot of younger people, going back to my point, don't really value that. They just think, okay, it's got the music and the special effects and the toys that you can buy that tie in with these droids and so on. That's what Star Wars is to them. And it's really sad.
But then again, they don't seem to be going out to support it. The toys aren't flying off the shelves. Like Star Wars, like, yeah, The Last Jedi opened high, but it died a death really quickly. It's like total earnings like fucking bombed.
Yeah.
And Solo was a massive failure.
I think that lost money specifically as well. Not just didn't make as much as it hoped, but I think it actually lost money.
I think there's a real danger that this one might do as well.
I mean, at the moment, out of 168 professional reviews, which is the critics' consensus, it's 58% at the moment. God knows what it'll go down to, I don't know if you can see that, but basically saying Star Wars suffers from frustrating lack of imagination but concludes this beloved saga with fan-focused devotion. That's one of the few positive things I've heard, that it does lend a lot to the original trilogy, and there's a lot of throwback there. Not that's necessarily good, but that's been basically one of the few things that I've heard said as a compliment, and that's not really all that much of a compliment. But yeah, I mean, Force Awakens, it's disappointing because I enjoyed The Force Awakens in isolation, similar to Man of Steel as well.
Well, coming out of The Force Awakens are like Poe Dameron,
Finn.
Yeah, Finn. I was going to say what was John Boyega's character, Finn, and Rey. It's like, I'm interested in all those stories, like where are they going?
Nowhere.
The Last Jedi just kind of, basically they spend all the film kind of shitting on the character of Poe Dameron as like, because you got to put down those toxic males. So it's like, well, okay, but you've made him kind of an idiot, which seems really counterproductive when you've spent... I mean, originally he was going to die, and then they're like, actually, he's really popular, so we'll bring him back. So now we're just going to spend this film like showing how he's like,
the fifth wheel.
Yeah, he's like, he's a loose cannon, he doesn't really listen. And it's like, well, that's not the message I took away from it, but the message I took away from it is Admiral Holdo is so shit at a job. Actual members of the Rebel Alliance are, trying to, like, jump ship. Like, in what part of the original trilogy did you ever get an indication of, no matter how bad it was for the Rebel Alliance, that hardcore rebels were jumping fucking ship? What the fuck? Yeah. You have to have Rose's character, like, sitting on the escape pods with a shock prod to make sure you don't escape. Like, what the fuck?
Didn't inspire, like, big heroics, in these characters. I mean, you can say, well, they're a useless character, but they weren't supposed to be. With it, Holdo was supposed to be, like, this heroic sort of purple-haired, gender studies professor that works in HR or something.
I mean, just even, like, not even going into that. Like, she's shit at her job. She reminds me a little bit of Janeway from Star Trek, although Janeway was a lot better. It was like the writers went into this obviously having a plan and what they wanted to do with her, like a big thing of how they wanted to portray her, but they didn't quite think everything through. So at the end of it, you kind of look back and it's like, well, she was kind of shit at her job, and then there was some big sacrifice at the end, which, to be honest, the more I think about it, the less it kind of makes sense how that actually worked. It's like, okay, if you could do that, why the fuck has nobody else been doing that, like, all the way through the trilogy? If it's that devastating to fly a ship into another ship at, like, hyperspace, like, why is that not a standard tactic?
Like you were saying with the characters as well, because obviously you've got Finn, and it's a good point that Jeremy Jahns made, because again he's another shill for Disney and Lucasfilm. As much as I like him, he is a shill, and he didn't mince words. He massively slated this film, and he made a really good point basically about how they haven't really done much new. We've had like heroes like on a desert planet taken away to do stuff. We've seen that in the originals, and they kind of redid that with this. What we hadn't had is have a stormtrooper character defect, and they did that with Force Awakens. That was something new.
Yeah.
But where did they go with that? Nowhere.
Well, to be honest, in The Last Jedi, he just seemed to regress and then have the same more or less character journey that he had in the first film. Because he kind of went back to selfish and wanting to escape the ship, and then he kind of had like basically that whole like pointless like casino planet that.
Yeah, it was pointless.
Yeah. Like I say, it was just one of those things where, like, okay, well, his character hasn't really gone anywhere. Poe Dameron's just fucked everything up, like, consistently everything he's done. And Rey's just hung around with grumpy Luke Skywalker for a while. Not really had much in the way of training, and then just returned to save the day.
Yeah.
It's like, and I like the character, and even I'm like, she's a bit Mary Sue in that.
And apparently in this one, it is way off the scales. It just doesn't explain like how she's got these powers, and her powers are just like mental off the scale in this. But it sort of explains it, because without going into spoilers, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because people can say, well, you obviously haven't seen the movie. I know what happens in it. I've known for like 4 months what happens in it because of the leaks, and they've been confirmed. I don't want to go into that here though, because I realise there are still people that want to watch the film. So, but yeah, so we'll cut it fairly short. But pretty much this was the consensus. You know, I'm taking my Disney films. I'm just going to take them down to CEX and just flog them basically. I mean, I haven't watched Solo since the cinema. I got it for last Christmas. It's still in shrink wrap basically. Not because I didn't want to watch it. I was like, oh yeah, I'll rewatch it. And I just couldn't be arsed. I really couldn't. And I've watched The Last Jedi once since the cinema, and I was so bored. It was just so uninspiring. Rogue One, I can live without, but I thought it was the best one. And The Force Awakens just kind of obviously was set up for what comes after, which hasn't been good. So they're going to CEX. Apparently, I'll get £30 for them on part exchange. So.
Well, like I say, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so I'm going to keep.
You washed the baby in the
with
the dishes.
So I'm going to keep Rogue One, but yeah, I can't really see myself wanting to go back and rewatch The Force Awakens if ultimately what it sets up doesn't go anywhere, because on its own it wasn't a very strong film.
Yeah, and I would say as well, you can get hold of the despecialised editions, or a way to getting hold of them if you want to watch the original 3 films in isolation and not be even tainted by the special editions. It is possible if you look up the despecialised editions.
I say, hopefully going forward things are looking more promising. I definitely think we're not going to hear much more of
Kathleen Kennedy.
No, I mean they can't sack her because of like in the Me Too generation. You can't.
Yeah.
Because it all be misogynism and stuff. But to be honest, it sounds like she's very much been like backburnered and like has no real control anymore, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I bet she's got a lot of dirt on a lot of people, because she's been in Hollywood for decades. I mean, if you watch like all the early Spielberg films like E.T. and Indiana Jones, her name's right up there. So.
Well, like I say, not even counting that, there's no way you could sack her without it like being a media disaster.
Yeah. Like,
she could do anything and you just could not sack her. Like, so don't expect to like hear that. But yeah, looking at some of the stuff going forwards, things like The Mandalorian, we could maybe see something good after this, but it's a real difference of like, will the fans actually care by that point?
Yeah. Well, cut it short there. There is a second part to this video. I'm not talking about Star Wars. We're going to record it now. I don't know if we'll upload it straight away or maybe do it the day after, but we're going to talk about something that hopefully is going to be a positive note to end this on, and that is the new Ghostbusters film. We've got a mailbag request for that. I knew I had this out for a reason. We've got a mailbag request about the new Ghostbusters trailer, so we're going to talk about that next time. So for now, is that everything?
Yeah.
Cool. Right, well, thank you very much for watching. You might want to knock off the video.
Hello, Buff.
Say hello, Buff.
Hello, Buff. No.
Well, at least was that a box of tissues on your face?
No!
I didn't even know what this was. How appropriate for the buff.
No! Why?